There is a specific kind of delusion that comes with surviving an affair for a whole year. You stop looking over your shoulder. You stop triple checking your phone. You start believing that you are completely invisible and that your husband is simply too blind to ever catch you. My husband, Thomas, was a corporate strategist. His entire career was built on observing data, finding structural weaknesses, and quietly moving pieces on a board until he won. I knew this about him. I had been married to him for 7 years, but somehow, in my own arrogance, I convinced myself that his analytical brain shut off the moment he walked through our front door. My affair partner, Eric, was a freelance graphic designer. He was passionate, impulsive, and made me feel like I was the center of the universe. We had been sneaking around for exactly 1 year. To celebrate our anniversary, Eric promised to take me out for the most romantic, lavish night of my life. He told me he had managed to get a prime Friday night reservation at Le Ciel, a Michelin-starred restaurant downtown that was notoriously impossible to get into. People waited 6 months for a table. Eric bragged for a week about how he had charmed the maitre d' over the phone to skip the waitlist. I told Thomas I was attending an overnight corporate team-building retreat. I bought a stunning new black dress, spent 2 hours getting ready at a hotel, and met Eric at the restaurant. The night felt like a movie. We were seated at a private, velvet-lined booth in the back. The lighting was perfect. Eric was holding my hand across the table, pouring me expensive wine, whispering about how we were meant to be together. I felt untouchable. I felt like I was living a second, infinitely better life. Then, the sommelier approached our table. He wasn't carrying the bottle of wine we had ordered. He was carrying a silver ice bucket holding a bottle of vintage Dom Perignon, easily worth $1,000. He set it down gently on the edge of our table, alongside 2 crystal flutes. "Excuse me," Eric said, looking confused but arrogant. "We didn't order this." The sommelier smiled politely. "I am aware, sir. This was sent with the compliments of the gentleman at the corner bar. He said to tell you, congratulations on your 1-year anniversary." My blood turned completely to ice. My heart stopped beating. I slowly turned my head, looking across the dimly lit dining room. Sitting alone at the mahogany bar, nursing a glass of scotch, was my husband. Thomas wasn't glaring at me. He wasn't storming over. He just raised his glass in a silent, mocking toast, took a sip, and then calmly stood up and began walking toward our table. My vision actually blurred. The luxurious restaurant suddenly felt like a prison cell. I tried to pull my hand away from Eric's, but Eric was still totally clueless. He puffed out his chest as Thomas approached, trying to act like the alpha male. "Can I help you, pal?" Eric asked, his voice dripping with attitude. Thomas didn't even look at Eric. He stood at the edge of our table, his perfectly tailored suit making Eric's off-the-rack blazer look cheap. He looked down at me, his face a mask of absolute, terrifying calm. "You look beautiful, Chloe," Thomas said quietly. "Much better than you usually look for corporate team-building retreats." Eric's face dropped. He suddenly realized exactly who he was talking to. His fake bravado evaporated in a millisecond. He physically shrank back into the velvet booth, his eyes darting around the room looking for an exit. "Thomas, please," I whispered, my voice trembling so hard I could barely speak. "Don't do this here. Let's go outside." "I'm perfectly fine right here," Thomas replied, pulling up an empty chair from the adjacent table and sitting down directly across from us. I wouldn't want to ruin Eric's big romantic gesture. After all, he worked so hard to get this table. Thomas finally turned his eyes to Eric. "Actually, that's not true, is it, Eric?" Eric swallowed hard, completely paralyzed. "You didn't charm the maitre d'," Thomas said, his voice slicing through the jazz music playing in the background. "You were on a 6-month wait list, but I happen to be personal friends with the owner of this restaurant. When I saw the waitlist confirmation email on Chloe's synced laptop 3 weeks ago, I made a quick phone call. I bumped you to the top of the list. I gave you this table." My jaw physically dropped. He had known for weeks. He didn't just catch us. He orchestrated the entire evening. He set the stage for my destruction. I wanted to see it for myself, Thomas continued, leaning forward, resting his arms on the table. I wanted to see the man my wife was willing to destroy our marriage for. And I have to admit, Chloe, I am incredibly underwhelmed. Hey man, you don't need to talk to me like that, Eric mumbled, looking down at his lap, unable to even make eye contact with Thomas. I'll talk to you however I want, Eric, Thomas said, his tone dropping to a dead, icy whisper. Because I also ran a background check on you last week. I know you're drowning in $40,000 of credit card debt. I know you've been using Chloe's income to fund your little dates. You aren't a romantic escape. You're a financial parasite. I closed my eyes, sobbing silently. The fantasy was dead. In 3 minutes, Thomas had taken the sweeping, cinematic romance I thought I was living and exposed it as a cheap, pathetic joke. Thomas stood up and buttoned his suit jacket. He reached into his pocket and dropped a heavy set of keys onto the white linen tablecloth. Those are the keys to your new apartment, Chloe, Thomas said. I signed a 6-month lease in your name. I moved your clothes and your personal items there this afternoon. The address is on the keychain. Your key to our house no longer works. Thomas, you can't just throw me away like this, I cried, no longer caring who in the restaurant heard me. I didn't throw you away, Thomas said, looking down at me with absolute, crushing indifference. I just relocated you to where you belong. He flagged down our waiter, who had been nervously hovering nearby. Thomas handed the waiter a black Amex card. I'll be covering their entire bill tonight, Thomas said loudly enough for the surrounding tables to hear. Including the Dom Perignon? It seems Eric here is going to need every penny he has to help my wife pay her new rent. Thomas didn't wait for a response. He didn't look back. He just turned around and walked out of the restaurant, leaving me sitting in front of a $2,000 bottle of champagne, completely homeless, utterly humiliated, and stranded with a coward who couldn't even look me in the eye.